So it is 11:30. Can you folks online hear me okay, I hope? We have a few folks in the room. We have, I don't know, about 12 people online. So I assume more people are going to roll in here. We did have more RSVPs. I am Alicia Archibald. I am the Community Recycling Coordinator for the City of Steamboat Springs. The way we're going to roll with this meeting today is I have a presentation. We're recording it. It'll be made available later. We're going to break this into two presentations. The first one's going to give a real good overview of what the waiver process is like. Okay, so I'm going to just go through the agenda, as you can see on the screen there. We're going to do some introductions. Basically, there's a couple of us here that are going to be helping you through these processes. We'll do an overview of the ordinance that requires this recycling program. What the implementation status is, like where we are in the mix of this. We'll talk about the waiver options, refuse screening requirements, and the plan overview of the modification plan and the recycling waiver. We'll talk about the next steps and some resources that we have available to help us get through this. And then shortly, a little PSA about wildlife resistant containers, and then a wrap up. And so there is a sign-in sheet going around the room. If you wouldn't mind just identifying who you are and the organization that you represent, so we can make sure to follow up if that's needed. But I think we're just going to dive in, if you don't mind. So like I said, I'm Alicia Archibald. This is my contact info. My focus is really to help, if we can avoid the waiver, which is the best thing, I can come out and do technical assistance. There's no cost for that. And I'm happy to come out and do that. And if it's to talk through to your boards, to your HOAs, to your residents, to your property management companies, to your hospitality companies, janitorial services, however I can help, even avoid the waiver process would be fabulous. I'm also going to help a little bit with the modification plan review. We'll get into that in a minute. And then, like I said, technical assistance. And then we have Darby Kenyon, Darby. And Darby works, she's a planning technician here at the city. And her role is really going to be to help with those recycling modification plan applications as they roll in, which will begin in June. And just a reminder that the steamboatsprings.net/recycling is really a great landing page to find out about all these things, because it'll talk about how to recycle right in the boat, things that are acceptable by the haulers, how to contact the haulers. We have training on there, Spanish and English, videos to help people know how to recycle right in the boat. But then on the left side of the screen, you'll also see links to these programs, to the waiver application process. And then when the modification plan comes available, that'll be posted there as well. How many of you are familiar with the ordinance? I know several of these faces. Okay. Okay. So the recycling ordinance it requires that commercial entities, so whether it's businesses, institutions, schools, properties that are multifamily of 3 or more properties, they're required to have whatever the trash level is, 50% of that additionally should have be available for recycling. So easy example for me is if you use an 8 cubic yard dumpster for trash and it's serviced once a week, that means you have 8 yards of trash capacity weekly. So then you'd be required to have 4 yards of recycling weekly. So it's just that simple of math. And you can get there all kinds of ways. So the program also has been a phased-in process. It's been an 18-month process. It ends July 31st of this year. And their haulers are on the hook to offer the service and communicate with all the properties, all the commercial properties that are their customers. So if you haven't heard from your hauler, maybe as a postcard or a letter or maybe on your bill, I have seen a lot of communications going out. personally because people are sharing with me that information because they may not like the way it was proposed or however, but it's on them to reach out and help us get to compliance. There will be waivers available. As I said, the waiver process is open now, and we'll talk about that. We're going to actually walk through it today. And that if you get a waiver, if you're approved for a waiver, it will be a 2-year time frame. We're going to dig into that deeper. Haulers must be providing appropriate labels for dumpsters is also a part of that ordinance. So if you're seeing that you have recycled dumpsters and there's no stickering on there that tells what can go in that dumpster, you should reach out to the hauler, and you can reach out to me and I can help you make that connection. It seems to be working pretty well when I let them know. And then the other thing is that trash containers must be wildlife resistant. The recycling dumpsters or carts do not have to be wildlife resistant. The idea is that you're going to have food waste or other waste that will be an attractant in your trash. If people are cleaning out their recycling containers, there shouldn't be as much of that. That doesn't mean the bears aren't going to grab or try to get into them. It just means that it's the requirement's not there on the recycling side. And briefly, what is the ordinance focused on? Recyclables means glass and plastic bottles and jars. Specifically, number 1 and 2 on the plastic side. Waste Management accepts more, but you would just want to contact the hauler to have any questions. Cardboard and paper, and then metal cans, tin and aluminum cans. I have been, hopefully, I think everybody here has received posters and magnets on what's available from us as far as the education goes. The folks here in the middle of the room are recycling ambassadors, and they are telling me that they're seeing that information as they move around different areas of the community. So that's fabulous. That's great. That means we're all having the same messaging out there. So I hope that really helps on the contamination side. We have more, and we can print more as everybody needs them. So just reach out to me. Again, it's posters that are laminated, that are intended to be able to be put outside on the enclosures for people to know what they can put in the recycle bin. And then we have refrigerator magnets. And again, both of those things are in Spanish and English for anybody who needs to use those. So where we are with implementation, we were hoping to be by December of last year at about 66% deployment of this commercial program. And we're actually closer to the 55% mark. So we're a little behind, which means the next few months are going to be a lot of fun, right? So by July, we should have, everybody should be recycling. There will not be any fines assessed either to the hauler or to the property, the customer, before March of 2025. And fines are those things like $100 a day if the customer says, I'm not recycling. I refuse to do this. It's been presented to me. I'm just not doing it. Those fines are to the tune of $100 a day. If the hauler is not doing their part and providing this, and they're saying, we're just not doing it, we're not going there, their fine is more. And again, these do not begin until March, but we really want to see if we can't get everybody in compliance. Do you all have a copy? I think I had enough copies of the ordinance back there, $28.99. If not, I have, it's online. It's on our recycling webpage, and it goes into, it's the ordinance, so we can talk deeper about that. So the waiver options, again, like I said, up to 2 years. It's going to extend the timeline that you could be assessed a fee, or those fines, I should say. So if you have a waiver, if you were approved for that, you wouldn't be fined in March of 2025 if you don't have your recycling yet, because you have that waiver. And so, like I said, the waiver is really just kind of buys a little bit of time to come into compliance. Reasons you might need a waiver are extreme space constraints, and that can look all kinds of ways. So we look at that, we address those. Maybe you're sharing recycling with some other property. So you could potentially be given a waiver that says you don't have to have the dumpster behind your property, or at your property because you're sharing, and then you just end up needing to show proof of that. Or maybe you haul your recyclables to a drop-off center, and so you would just need to show proof of that, and that's, you know, it's acceptable. And again, we would just validate these reasons for applying. What are the conditions? Why is it that you need to get this waiver? In addition to this, the Community Development Code requires refuse management. So what that is screening on 3 sides. Basically, it could be as small as just a fence that goes around the dumpster. So a 3-sided fence doesn't have to have a roof, doesn't have to have a gate. But all recycling dumpsters on the commercial properties are supposed to have those. Trash and recycling should be both in that screening. I've seen some situations where the dumpster is screened and then recycling or trash was screened and recycling was added later, and it's sitting outside the screening, but the trash has this really nice fancy cover. So just knowing that those should be both in that enclosure space. All right. So let me go back to this. The screening requirement, we are going to talk next. The next screen is going to talk a little bit about a recycling modification plan that's going to become available in June. There was an ordinance passed just last month by City Council that is going to allow for if you need to build those enclosures because you don't have any on your property, it's going to make that process quicker and also less expensive. So you potentially won't have to go through City Council or Planning Commission. It'll be an administrative process, and it'll have a fee to it, but it'll be less than what is required today. So kind of the difference between the two, the recycling waiver, again, you're asking, you have an issue, space constraints, I take my stuff somewhere else, I share with someone, I don't need to do this. And so you apply for a waiver. That can also be used to extend your compliance timeline. That application fee is going to be $250. Another thing that could do, if we see that the space constraints are so intense and there's no way to adjust, you could potentially request that the waiver would reduce the percentage of capacity that it's required. So maybe your property doesn't generate 50% of its waste is recycling. You would just need to prove that, and we could potentially approve a waiver that would reduce that 50% to something else. So that's also another way it could be done. That's the waiver process. The recycling modification plan is that ordinance. I did have copies of that on the back table that you can pick up. This won't come into play until June. It'll be on the website. It'll be made available. And again, it's that administrative process to either enlarge current screening or to build new stuff. It's going to be for a limited period of time. This ordinance is allowing this process to be short with smaller fees for 2 years. So if you don't have this screening, this is really a great time to do it, because we're also going to have some generic plans drawn up by an engineering company that will make available to anybody who wants to use them. And so we're doing our best to really try to reduce the burden on that. Again, it's going to be for a 2-year time frame. You may need only one of the other of these processes to come into compliance. You may not need any of it. I mean, the goal, like I said in the beginning, was we can get you recycling with what you have. That's best, right? That's the easiest way to go about it. The other thing that the recycling modification plan would do is potentially allow variances to other CDC requirements in order to get into recycling compliance. So it could address snow storage, parking, landscaping, things like that. So those are other parts of that. So you may only need a waiver. You may only need a modification plan. There may be times when you need both. I know with property management companies here, you have lots and lots of situations. So, like I said, the waiver process is now live. I think one of the most important things to do is to really think about why you're applying for the waiver. Download these forms that are on the website, read through them, get that information together. We're going to need, the property owner's signature. The submittals that are needed will be listed out on the request form. Photos, a description as to why you're doing this. Those are all real important to gather all this information, pictures of your screening that you currently have. If you can gather all this information up, put it into a digital folder, when it comes time to go into the City View portal to upload this request, it'll be much smoother. And so the portal does allow you to save your application, but it doesn't always work the way it should. And so just for sanity's sake, it would just be good to have all that stuff together and ready to just upload things pretty streamlined. And Darby's role and my role is to help with that. So if you don't understand it, if you've never done this before, that's why we're available to help with that process. We're going to go deeper into this in a minute, but I just wanted to really just give a bigger overview of it. Again, on the waiver application, you're going to need to have payment ready. So again, $250 for that application fee. The way it's going to work is you'll have your submittals. The application will be reviewed by me, by Darby. We'll follow up if anything's missing. The portal allows for communication to happen. Like if I say something's missing, it'll send an email to that applicant. So it's pretty seamless, and then that just gets followed up on. Site visit will likely need to be scheduled, depending on the photos and what we can agree to or discuss. It may be that a site visit is necessary, and it's part of that process. If anything's missing or not correct, then there might need to be a resubmittal, which would determine whether, your application needs revisions. And then we just kind of start that over again. The decision on that recycling waiver could take 4 weeks, it may take less. Knowing that we're almost 50% not compliant right now, and people are going to want to probably pursue a waiver. I have a feeling it's going to be a lot. So I just want to help manage expectation on timeline of getting back. So if we can get back quicker, that'll absolutely be great, of whether it's approved or denied. And again, it'll be a conversation. It won't just, we'll talk through it. Modification plan, how to get ready for that. Again, this is really specific to enclosures, the trash screening. Again, you want to make sure that you've got your information downloaded and completed. Putting your information together in a digital folder is just really the easiest way to go about it. What your screening looks like now and why you have an issue. Photos, like I said, are really helpful. So it's kind of the same thing. But there are more submittals that are required on this one. Again, it's a modification plan to the property. And so we would want to know what the existing conditions are. A narrative of why you need this, your current site plan. There are some of these that aren't necessarily going to be on every modification plan application. If it's needed, there might be a landscape plan. If building this enclosure or expanding this enclosure affects your current landscaping or lighting, then we may need to know what your current plan is so we can see what that adjustment would be. Same thing with, parking, signage and the striping plan, if those things are needed. Here's some resources. Again, if you start off at the recycling webpage, steamboatsprings.net/recycling, you will get connected to both of these processes. And then there's the planning department's website, a resource center. It's lots of information there. And then the City View portal. Again, quick PSA, wildlife, the bears are out, and we're trying to reduce the the bear-human interaction as much as possible. I've seen a lot of dumpsters when I'm out and about that they may be built to be wildlife resistant. However, people are not locking them. And so that's not going to help keep the bears out. So that's whether the person using it, whether it's the hauler, the person on the truck not securing it back after they open it. So just a reminder, containers don't work if they're not closed properly. Like propping them open with shovels and things like that is just not a good idea. So, and again, this is just to provide contact information for Darby and me. And that's the overview. So do I have any questions about the ordinance itself? The next presentation we'll do is really going to be a training of step-by-step how to go through that application process for the waiver. And we're going to use the microphone so people online can hear the question. Holly has a question up there.
All right, let's see if this is working. I think it is.
Sure. Thank you, sir.
So I have two questions.
Okay.
The first, property owner signature, is that for an association? Is that every owner or just the board?
Bob, would you like to answer that question? Use a microphone.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if this is working. Yeah. So the question was, property owner's signature for the waiver application would be the board president would have to sign that. Yeah.
And then all dumpsters that currently are not in an enclosure, it was my understanding they were not going to be made to be in an enclosure, but this is indicating otherwise.
So there's a couple things with dumpsters that aren't currently in an enclosure. Perhaps they should have been. Perhaps they were placed there without proper permitting and would have required it at the time. So I don't think in that situation, we would not consider those to be legal grandfathered. Or if they were existed basically pre-code, like predates our requirements for the enclosure, then they could be grandfathered and could remain. But when you're expanding these facilities, even those ones that were legal grandfathered would need to now comply. And my name is Bob Keaton with Principal Planner with the City Planning Department.
Thank you. There's a question over here. Hold on just a moment. You get to use a microphone so people online can hear you.
Oh, okay. What were the dates of your enclosure requirements? When you said predating, what is that date?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer offhand, and we'll need to research this for when we're ready to go to accept the waiver modifications. I'm sorry, the recycling modifications, but at least 20 years, yeah, if not more. Could be almost 30. That's my best guess off the top of my head.
Thank you.